Hi, I'm Phil Harbottle, and this is my 20th video discussing 1950s British science fiction paperbacks. Now this video I'm going to be discussing one of the most collectible series of the 1950s, the Tit-Bits science fiction library. And my video is partly based on an article I did for Guy Levis's paperback parade, number 109. Now here we see the first 10 books in this 19-book series of the Tit-Bits Science Fiction Library. When London publisher Sky Unlimited defaulted on their contracted payments to John Russell Fearn in the autumn of 1952, the author terminated his exclusive contract with them to write science fiction novels as Vargo Stanton. Once it became known amongst other publishers that Fearn was free of his contract, the author was in demand. Fearn was swamped with offers, and one of the firms involved was C. Arthur Pearson Limited. He was invited to write a new series of short novels in what was to be called the Tit-Bits Science Fiction Library. The enterprising Pearsons also made arrangements to use covers by Sky's former star cover artist Ron Turner, whose brilliant illustrative covers had contributed to the success of the Vargo Stanton series. At the same time, Fearn reached agreement to write science fiction novels for no less than 3 other publishers as well as Pearsons: Curtis Warren under unspecified pseudonyms, Panther under his own name, continuing an earlier association with the same publisher, Hamilton, and the newly formed Milestone Limited, who intended to continue the Vargo Stanton byline. Pearsons allowed Fearn to choose his own pseudonyms, and so he created Lawrence F. Rose, which you see there on the first book, which was a tribute to his mother, Florence Rose Fearn. Fearn's plan was to feature a new character on the lines of a science fiction saint. So Fearn came up with Ermar Brown, a space detective, formidable in physique and intellect, who was half Earthman, and half Martian, Ermar Brown, as a result of the first interplanetary marriage. Additionally, Fearn was to write one-off separate novels under the byline of Conrad G. Holt, which were to alternate with the Saint series. The first 2 novels turned into Pearsons were The Hell Fruit and Cosmic Exodus. Both stories were written to Fearn's usual standard: fast-paced, exciting, fairly complex plots with plenty of interplanetary action and mystery. But before Fearn could write any more, Sky Unlimited were recapitalised, and the new director settled Fearn's outstanding debt. Desperate to get him back, Sky offered to pay him in advance for 2 novels a month, science fiction. The offer was irresistible, and Fearn withdrew his novels from Milestone and Panther, but he'd already sold 2 novels to Curtis Warren, and so those ones slipped through. However, Fearn was back to writing exclusively for Sky, and again, science fiction as Vargo Stanton, and also as Volstead Gridban, a name he took over from E.C. Tubb. Pearson's plans for Fearn to write a monthly series were scuppered, and they didn't immediately run the novels they had bought. Instead, they solicited further material from other authors to build up an inventory, and they delayed the series until they had sufficient material to commence it, which was in September, in the autumn of 1953. Meanwhile, news of Pearson's market had reached the London Circle, a network of writers working for New World's editor, John Cornell. Amongst the authors who responded to Pearson's request for material were F.G. Rear, who quickly cobbled together 2 connected novelettes he'd published in New Worlds in 1952, time was and man's questing ended, and he sold a fix-up novel to Pearsons as The Star Seekers. Other people who responded were E.C. Tubb and Kenneth Bulmer, who were both experienced authors, and also John T. Philippant. The latter was a fan and a member of the London Circle, who held monthly meetings in the White Horse Public House, which we've seen in previous videos. Philippant hadn't written anything previously, but he created his own exclusive pseudonym, John Rackham, for a connected series of novels featuring the exploits of Space Service team member, what was his name? Frank Fairless, Lieutenant Frank Fairless, who on occasions was able to operate a robotic duplicate of himself known as the Space Puppet, which was the first title in the series. E.C. Tubb was already contracted to write for Milestone as Charles Grey, and was also contributing regularly to Panther and Skyen under his own name. He didn't really have any time to write for Pearsons, but he came up with a novel solution. He laid aside his other commissions and worked continually for 8 hours a day for a week. So he took a week off from his other publishers to write exclusively for Pearsons. And after a week, he produced 2 novels at high speed, The Living World and Menace from the Past. And they were submitted under the pseudonym of Carl Maddox. The latter novel, Menace from the Past, took him just 32 hours to complete, while the former title was a thinly disguised rewrite of a novel he'd recently completed for Panther, The Metal Eater. But despite the speed of production, they were fascinating works of a high standard. Tubb had filled him with all of his then current ideas and themes about interstellar travel via hyperdrive, mysterious advanced alien races, and a fabulous metal uranium. The stories thus became pure distillations of early Tubb and are much sought after collector's items. Let's have a look at the remaining 9 novels in this 19-book series. Bear with me, just to reveal the remaining 9 covers. There we see them, the remaining 9 books in the series. Kenneth Bulmer contributed 4 novels as Philip Kent. See Philip Kent, that's his first title. And whilst these were far from being his best work, they too are of considerable collector interest. Fast-paced and Bulmer's slick and laconic style, they show his fascination with naval history, Captain Hornblower in space. The remaining novels in this series were undistinguished, but since all of them had stunning Ron Turner cover art, that scarcely matters to today's collectors. The 19 published titles have become the most heavily collected series of the 1950s period, and whenever copies change hands, which is rarely, they do so at twice and 3 times the price of contemporary British science fiction novels. Here we see the titles, here we see the Turner covers in all their glory. Now, any Ron Turner fan trying to collect the Tit-Bits series today would have to pay a small fortune, upwards of £600, for a full set in fine condition, assuming that is that they could find copies, which is highly unlikely. But the good news is that most of the covers can be found on much cheaper recently published books. I was able to reuse the covers on different titles by other writers in my literary agency. Here we can see some of these other covers. There's one. This is an excellent book. It's a collection of Arthur Porges, the impossible crime writer, famous for his mystery stories. And there's one of Gary Levy's Griffin books. But the rest of the covers, which you see here, are all published by Wildside. And since the books they appear on are mostly better than the original novels by Philip E. High, Sidney Bounds, John Russell Fearn, of course, this is another no-brainer. So get online and snap up these bargains if you collect Ron Turner covers.